In this video, I'm going to be going over skeletal muscle fiber types. Within every skeletal muscle of the body, it's composed of a mixture of slow and fast muscle fibers. So we don't just have one fiber type in a skeletal muscle, we have a mixture of fiber types. And between the fast and slow fiber types, there are other fiber types between these two extremes. In this video, I'm not going to go over those various other fiber types. And if you want more information on this, then after you go through the fast and slow fiber types, then you'll be able to understand the various gradations between these fiber types. The types of muscle fibers are based on the contraction speed and major pathways for forming ATP. When you look at the speed of contraction, slow and fast fiber types are based on how fast their myosin ATPases split ATP, resulting in filaments sliding over each other. The thick and thin filaments are sliding over each other. Remember, we're talking about the myosin head grabbing on and pulling the thin filament over the thick filament, and how ATP comes in and energizes that head? Well, within the head is an ATPase. ASE lets you know it's an enzyme, and this enzyme splits ATP to ADP and phosphate. And when it does that, it releases the energy to power the head, to cock back the head. Well, fast twitch fibers have a faster ATPase that splits ATP quickly to cock the head back quickly. Slow twitch fibers have a slower ATPase, so it doesn't break the ATP down as quickly, which means the head's not going to be cocked back as quickly. So that's the first major difference. The second major difference is a major pathway for forming ATP. We have oxidative fibers that rely mostly on aerobic respiration. These are your slow twitch fibers. And we have glycolytic fibers that rely more on anaerobic respiration or glycolysis. Slow fibers are also called type 1, red, or slow twitch fibers. You want to make sure you star this. Slow fibers are specialized for endurance. They have high fatigue resistance. And these consist of things such as your postural muscles and muscles that are involved in helping to run a marathon. They contract slowly because of their myosin ATPases split ATP at a slower rate. Depends on oxygen for aerobic pathways to make ATP. And because they primarily depend on oxygen to make ATP, they're going to have abundant capillaries, they're going to have lots of mitochondria and myoglobin content to support the increased blood flow and high levels of oxidative metabolism. Remember, myoglobin is a pigment found in muscle that's specialized for oxygen storage until needed. So myoglobin gets loaded with oxygen, and when that muscle cell needs the oxygen, it releases oxygen for aerobic respiration. That's in addition to the oxygen provided by hemoglobin. Well, myoglobin gives the muscle a reddish color. Thus, they're called red fibers. So when you're looking at here, these darker fibers are the slow twitch fibers. The lighter fibers are your fast twitch fibers. Examples of slow fibers, of slow twitch fibers, are the soleus muscle, like the calf muscle. They contain more slow fibers than fast fibers, but all skeletal muscle have a mixture of these two fiber types. Fast fibers, also called type 2, or white, or fast twitch fibers, they're going to split ATP at a rapid rate and thus have fast contraction velocity after stimulation. But they fatigue rapidly. They contain densely packed myofibrils, so their myosin heads, shown here, are going to cock back really quickly because they split ATP really quickly. Well, they contain densely packed myofibrils. Remember, those are your thick and thin myofilaments? They have large glycogen reserves and relatively few mitochondria and myoglobin because they primarily use anaerobic respiration. Since they're primarily using anaerobic respiration to make their ATP, they have less extensive blood supply and fewer mitochondria because oxidative metabolism is of secondary importance. They still use oxygen to make ATP. It's just not as prevalent as using an anaerobic respiration. Most of the ATP production is without oxygen or anaerobic. They do not contain a lot of myoglobin, and thus they appear white and are called white fibers. These are best suited for short-term power activities, such as throwing a ball or weightlifting. Because when you're lifting weights or you're doing these power activities, it's hard to get enough blood flow in there to supply enough oxygen for aerobic respiration. So these have the enzymes and the capability to go anaerobic very quickly and make their ATP for these powerful movements. Example, well, most arm muscles have more fast fibers than slow fibers. Thought question: Why do chickens have white breast meat and dark leg meat? And what does this say about the activities that are associated with these muscles? And why do ducks have dark breast meat? When you look at chicken's breast, it's composed mainly of fast twitch fibers, given the characteristics of white meat appearance. Now, we don't have this in our bodies because we have a mixture of the two fiber types. Even though we could have more of one fiber type in a skeletal muscle than another, it's such a mixture that you don't have white muscles versus dark muscles in our bodies. But in a chicken, you have white meat because it has white fibers predominantly in the breast meat. There's relatively little blood supply and less myoglobin than the dark meat. Muscles are adapted to contract rapidly for a short time period, but they fatigue quickly. So can chickens fly long distances? No. They can fly quickly, but they fatigue rapidly because it's primarily white fibers within their breast meat. Then when you compare this with the skeletal muscle fiber type that you find in the breast of ducks, what color is that? Dark. Why? Because ducks can fly for long distances, and they have endurance type fibers. They have a lot of the red type or slow twitch fibers for endurance. However, you look at chickens and with their ability to walk, they can walk for hours and hours and hours because their leg muscles are composed of slow twitch fibers, and the meat is dark because of that. These muscles are adapted for endurance, running. Their darker appearance is partly due to richer blood supply, lots of capillaries, and the presence of myoglobin. Remember, myoglobin is that oxygen-carrying pigment of muscle tissue, and it stores oxygen temporarily until the muscle needs it for that aerobic respiration. When you look at skeletal muscle response to exercise, well, exercise can induce two types of changes in muscle fibers. Changes in their oxidative ATP synthesizing capacity and muscle size. When you look at the improvement of oxidative capacity, the ability to make ATP, well, regular aerobic endurance exercise increases a number of factors, including the quantity of mitochondria, the number of capillaries supplying blood to these fibers, and their myoglobin content. So as you're working out, you're doing these endurance activities, your muscles are responding, you're making more capillaries, you're making more mitochondria. All these things are involved in getting your muscles better adapted to the activity you're doing. Muscles can use oxygen more efficiently and therefore can better endure prolonged activity without fatiguing. This type of exercise, the endurance type exercise, targets slow twitch oxidative fibers, those dark fibers. When you look at muscle hypertrophy, well, regular anaerobic, short duration, high intensity resistance training, such as weightlifting, causes muscles to hypertrophy. Most of that muscle cell fiber or myofiber thickening results from increased synthesis of myofibrils. Remember, the myofibrils consist of thick and thin myofilaments, the myosin, the actin, which permit greater opportunity for cross-bridge interaction and consequently increases muscle size and contractile strength. And these target fast fibers. So when you look at these bodybuilders here, it's the fast fibers. You look at these two individuals. This individual here is a marathon runner. He's been training his slow twitch fibers, more mitochondria, more blood supply. But he doesn't have a lot of that big, thick muscle mass. This individual here, big, thick muscles. He's been training to target his fast twitch fibers. So he can do a 100-yard dash a lot quicker than this marathon runner. But the marathon runner can run a lot longer without becoming fatigued than this individual right here who's your sprinter. It all depends on the muscles you're targeting. The best exercise, of course, is to target both endurance and fast twitch. Let's test your knowledge on fiber types, part 1. Pause your video, select the term that makes the sentence correct. Here are the answers. Part 2. Pause your video, select the term that makes the sentence correct. Here are the answers. Part 3. Pause your video, select the term that makes the sentence correct. Here are the answers. Part 4. Pause your video, select the term that makes the sentence correct. Here are the answers. And this concludes the video, and let me know if you have any questions.